Thank you so much. I'm really very honored to be here tonight to share with you my story for the first time since I ever became an activist, social justice activist. But before I do that, I wanted to just ask you a question. I want you to think about it, and we will revisit this question later on. Have you ever wondered where on earth would be the safest place to be a woman? At the age of 27, when I got my first job, and I got my first paycheck, so I wanted to treat my elder sister, and I invited her to a salon. So we got our hair done, and we were walking out of the salon. Then we noticed somebody was following us, and we did not know why. But then as the person approached, he asked me, "Can you please cover your hair?" And I said, "No, I don't want to cover my hair." And that was the time of the Sharia law, when Sharia law was introduced in Sudan. And we were just still Sudan. We were not South Sudan yet. So the argument took us to the Sharia court. And the Sharia courts, like, they were all over the place for non-compliance with Sharia law. So we entered the court without even given a chance to defend myself. I found myself, I was sentenced to 40 lashes. I wanted to tell the judge, I am a Christian. I am from the South. Sharia law does not apply to me. But I was escorted outside of the court, and as we walked out, I had to go in a very big place, public place, and I had to actually put my hand behind my back and kneel down for the lashes. 40 lashes. And when the officer ended, they expected me to cry. But I refused to, because I did not want to give them that. I got up, shook myself, and I determined that I will spend the rest of my life defending the rights of the women, the right of South Sudanese women. I did not feel safe. That was not a place for me to stay, so I had to flee. I fled the country. But in 2005, the war between North and South Sudan ended. And I said, okay, that might be a very good opportunity for me now to address the injustices of the women. So I came back from exile, found the South Sudan Women's Empowerment Network, an organization that is advocating for women's rights and women's empowerment through programs that increases women's participation in decision-making level. And the issues that we were working about were so much intense. So we realized that in order to address women's issues, we have to work through networks. We have to work together as women groups. So we formed a network of 65 women's organizations to address issues like child marriage, because child marriage was and is still an issue in South Sudan, because young girls, they are being given out for marriage as young as 12 years old, as young as 15. And we also dealt with the issue of the child compensation. Child compensation is a practice that is still practicing up to now in South Sudan, and that is to solve murder cases. If a family A murdered a son of a family B, then a family A has to give a girl child as a compensation to family B. And that girl child, when she goes to family B, she could be anything, from washing, cleaning, and when not only that, when she grows up, she has any one of the male from family B can make her pregnant, so that she can have a child boy. It has to be boy to compensate for the murdered son. We also worked around sexual gender-based violence. So sexual gender-based violence is now becoming an endemic issue in South Sudan, especially around the conflict zone. So we work with around 1,000 women, and with these 1,000 women, there are almost every woman that we talked with, she experienced rape. But then we wanted to have policy reform. We wanted to have new laws since we have peace in the country. So we mobilized the network of the women, and we marched the street, and we demanded the government to ratify UN convention called CEDAW, the Convention of Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, as well as having a national action plan for UN Security Council 1325. And I'm so proud to say that after 6 years of constant work, of constant advocacy, we were able to, South Sudan was able to ratify CEDAW in 2014, and that is when I handed the president of South Sudan the CEDAW and the UN Security Council Resolution 1325. And I can proudly say that I was part of the team that created National Action Plan for South Sudan. And you would think this is the happy ending for women suffering in South Sudan, right? No, actually not. The real suffering started when South Sudan gained its independence in 2011. So, and we still continue working with the women. So the numbers of women that we work with, because 75% of them experienced rape, 29% were rejected by their families because of the stigma associated with that, and 13% they have children now out as a result of the rape. So in 2011, South Sudan gained its independence, and we said, okay, now, I personally thought, okay, now I am a free citizen. I'm no longer a second-class citizen in a country that does not respect my right as a woman. So when South Sudan gained its independence in 2011, it was like a new dawn. That is a new chapter. South Sudan was like a white paper. We could actually draw the future of the women and how we want to live. But dreams shortly lived. 2 years after the independence of South Sudan, conflict erupted, internal conflict erupted, and the women again were subjected to rape, to injustices, because the first war of Sudan and South Sudan, the war was fought in the south, not in the north. So the women in the south suffered. Now when we got an independence, the internal conflict, again, women are used as a weapon of war. It's just like shaming from both parties. So women became again victims of the current movement. So as we are continue working on this, the conflict ended with signing of the peace agreement in 2015. But short-lived. 1 year after that, the two parties again engaged in a conflict, and they signed another peace agreement in 2018. And 1 week from now, this agreement of 2018 is supposed to be implemented. The outcome of this peace agreement is power distribution, political power distribution. Women were not part of this. We were not part of the peace agreement. And the representation of women in these peace processes was just mainly cosmetic. It does not really have an effect. So when we say we want more women, they will just go and bring more women, two parties, and put the women right there. But not necessarily they have any effect on the outcome of the peace itself. So the question I asked earlier, where do you think would be the safest place just to be a woman? There is a study that carried out by Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security, and they were examining or reviewing women's well-being within 3 dimensions: participation, security, and justice in 167 countries. In a scale of 0 to 1, so 0 being very weak, 1 being very strong. Norway scored the first country in the world that a woman can be actually safe. I wasn't surprised that South Sudan is ranked 163 out of 167. But what I'm surprised about that the United States is not at the top 10, not even the top 15. It's ranked number 19. What I'm saying is that all of us that are sitting here in our own capacity, students, academics, community, business, politicians. We all have a power, we all have a way of joining the conversation on the quest for peace for women of South Sudan. And if you want to find more, you can go into our website, sswen.org, and you will see the kind of work we're doing, and you can actually join contribute with your ideas on how we go about this. So tonight, before I get down, I just want to say one thing, that if you tremble at any injustice, then you are a comrade of mine. Thank you for listening.